Look, we meet at a difficult and serious time. A time of lost hopes, a time of lost power, a time of some broken dreams, and a time, let's be honest, of some impending nightmares. We confront a government which is weak in principle, but strong in purpose. And be under no illusion what that purpose is. It is to broker a centre-right consensus in Britain, all the while calling it, quote-unquote, progressive. But a government nonetheless, a consensus nonetheless, which would exclude Labour from government for a long time and hurt some of the neediest people in our country. The Cameron vision mustn't be underestimated by anyone in the Labour Party or sympathetic to the Labour Party. It is to recreate in the 21st century the same coalition that dominated the 20th century. The coalition between economic liberals and partisan conservatives. Working people left out, Labour kept out. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. That is the vision of Cameron. All over Britain today, there are teachers and pupils dreading the news that their school is not going to get the rebuilding that they were expecting. There are care assistants wondering if their job is safe. There are pensioners concerned about cuts in police. And there are business people asking whether the ideology of the current government has triumphed over common sense in the drive for austerity that they are bringing in. And it's the task of anyone who wants to be leader of the Labour Party and leader of our movement as a whole to understand how we found ourselves in this position and to break its dynamics and generate something different. That's what this leadership election should be about. It must have an honest reckoning of the last 13 years, but it has to be about more than the last 13 years. I think that we achieved great things and won great victories in government that have helped change communities like this. I actually think we were insufficiently proud of our record during the election. It's almost as if we expected the Guardian or the Daily Mail to do our work for us in talking up what had been achieved. But we lost the trust of people and we ceased to be a repository for their hopes of a better tomorrow. For that, some blame attaches to the lack of humility about mistakes we made, because we did make mistakes as well as being proud of our record. And to redeem the promise of Labour politics, we need the renewal that has been too long postponed. And if we don't do it now, we won't get the election victory that we think we need. Our inspiration can come from the past, but our focus must be on the future, because our task is not to debate how we could have built a better yesterday. It's how we actually build a better tomorrow. And there's no better place to start that process than with the life and teaching of Keir Hardie. He was the first leader, and his influence flowed through every generation of party leaders, each finding inspiration in different aspects of his life and his leadership. And I am no different to them. But I reflect that there are two perils for anyone thinking about Keir Hardie's life. The first peril is the peril of nostalgia, the temptation to view his life and times as not simply better than our own, but to ignore the poverty, the exploitation, the insanitary housing, the illiteracy, the dangerous pits, the precariousness of the lives of ordinary people. Without that understanding, the genuine heroism of Hardie's achievement in organising and leading a movement that stood at odds with the prevailing beliefs of the time and its realities would be diminished. By disregarding the real progress that's been made in freedom, in knowledge, in technology, in healthcare, in education, in politics since then, we undermine our understanding of how politics can shape a better world. But there's a second peril as well, and it's the peril of contempt for the achievements of our forebears in perilous circumstances. It wasn't necessary to dispossess the peasantry through enclosures in order to improve agricultural efficiency. That insistence is indifferent to the sense of loss, grief, the disruption that change can bring. And it's that loss of connection to ordinary people, to places, to crafts and to congregations, which is so often dismissed as the price of progress that we have to take on. In other words, Hardie did steer something of a third way, between a nostalgia that is hopeless and a contemptuous modernism which is reprehensible. And in doing that, he steered an important course and set an important example for our party. Hardie said that the definition of modernisation, in which unregulated markets set the price and conditions of labour, price and conditions of land, of food and of housing, was wrong. He spent his entire adult life arguing and organising for the truth that human beings and nature are not commodities to be bought and sold, and for the idea that democratic politics was the way that we act together to protect and advance our humanity. That didn't make him a Luddite against progress. It gave him an ethical core on which to judge proposals for change. And that's relevant to our times today. In 1994, we did rewrite Clause 4 of our Constitution. But we didn't substitute one policy prescription for another. We changed a time-bound commitment to one way of organising society, or rather one way of organising our economy through nationalisation, to a timeless commitment to a set of ethical principles. And the new Clause 4 explicitly drew on Hardie's ethical socialism and stated that by our common endeavour we achieve more than we achieve alone. At the same time, Hardie fiercely defended freedom of religion, freedom of association, and freedom of expression. He was that most precious of founders, a realistic radical, who built coalitions towards a common goal, clearly understood that human values should rule, not those of the market or of the imperial state that ruled in the interests of owners alone. Labour values are not simply abstract ideas like freedom or equality. Distinctive labour values are built on relationships, in practices that strengthen an ethical life. Practices like solidarity, where we actively share our fate with other people. Reciprocity, which combines equality and freedom. Mutuality, where we share the benefits and the burdens of association. These are the forms of the labour movement, the mutual societies, the cooperatives, the trade unions, whose strength continues in parts of Wales and around the country today. It was built on ethical relationships that were forged between people through common action. That's also the importance of Keir Hardie. The values were embedded in the movement. Hardie was not a mechanical reformer who tried to bring about change through external control. He was a moral reformer who understood that you cannot create virtuous people by bureaucratic methods imposed from on high. People had to be empowered to do it for themselves. And the labour movement was the great moral teacher of his time. That was the moral importance of organisation for him. It was the way that working people built a shared culture upon labour values, which were not exclusively individual, but were concerned with the ethics of the common life, of democratic politics. And as I will say later, we need to take steps to restore the primacy of reciprocity, solidarity, and mutuality as core labour practices that are the foundation of a good society.